Good afternoon. Welcome to C&T Collectibles IMC, and it's time for our Friday chart blast, where we look at some of our favorite sport cards and the price action therein. Fundamentals will tell you what is happening, or what should be happening, rather. Price will tell you what is happening. And so let's look at the price action, see if we can determine any value. And as always, we start off with Mike Trout. The long-term trend is up. I had this big spike in the early part of the year here, and then it had a controlled decline down here. So there's a lot of buyers, but they're underwater. And what we're seeing is we were looking at a pause kind of in this area here, and we got it with a decent little spike, but now it's starting to leak below this area here. So it's finding support kind of at that 42.50 area or something like that. So yeah, 43.50. So right in the area. So your best case scenario now is a pop back up to this range, and then we'll just have some sideways action. So let me put bubble talk to a rest real quick. You know, people are talking about bubble cards in a bubble. It's like they were in a bubble. But this is how they kind of correct themselves. They come back to a certain level, and I think you'll see some digestion. And who knows what happens during the season if he does what he normally does, top 5 player, MVP candidate. Then these prices should come back up just a little bit here. So I didn't write down PSA 9 information this week. We know that the PSA 9 card is a little expensive relative to this one. So if you've been watching on a weekly basis, you kind of know the drill, and these will just try and fly through them. So anyways, Mike Trout, best case, I think, for now. Bottom of the range, could see a decent pop up here, but we might be in for some sideways action. And as Mike Trout goes, so does the rest of the hobby here. If no one's buying Mike Trout, are they going to buy a lot of other stuff? So yeah, maybe it's an expensive card. They might find something a little bit cheaper. All right, Lou Bob, zoom in just a little bit here, and he is at the bottom of his range. This area is held for the most part over the last few months. This goes back to October, November, and each time has been a buying opportunity. When we get to the top of the range, it's a selling opportunity. About 155 bucks here, 100 bucks on the downside. So let's say he comes out and hits a couple home runs, then you could see a move back towards the top of the range. Below this, you probably don't want any part of this card, because now he's going to start to look like a $50 or $60 player, which is what you see in the PSA 10 of guys that are not expected to be. They could be very, very good players. I think there's a lot of value in those players, but the $100 to $150 area is reserved for players that have actually done something, and he hasn't quite gotten there yet. So Lou Bob, I would say, is a buy for now, but below this area, you want to be a little bit careful. All right, Mookie Betts' longer-term trend is up. You can see he's starting to leak below it a little bit here. So in the intermediate term, we've seen this before. Consolidation down to the lower part of the range, consolidation to the lower part of the range. So he's at an interesting area here. But if he dropped back down to $600, that's not that wouldn't be surprising. And sitting at a $767 price tag right now, this could drift back down to this area here. So the trend is down. What you want to do is just wait for it to pop back out of that. So trend is down, pop up, and you had a decent move. And so while it's continuing downwards, you kind of have this lower boundary that you can target. And ultimately, I mean, you've got a lot of buying in here. We'll see what happens. But again, with Mike Trout drifting lower, a lot of these higher end cards, I don't know if they catch much of a bid either. So they could have a pretty monster week. But we'll look at the most important chart at the end here. All right, Ronald Acuna. This is the bat down. This is a card that I'm actively looking at here, and I would love to get it right in this area here. Probably not a PSA 10. I'd go for the 9, and if it comes back down to like 600 bucks, I'd be very, very excited about that. So currently it's sitting at about $2,200. So if it can drop down to $1,800, that would be a nice level for the PSA 9. So again, top of the range, and if you're an aggressive seller, this is where you take some off, and you see that the selling is starting to come in a little bit here. It might have to fall into an area where there's some buying, and so we're close to that. But again, there could be some further downside. And with this move right here, this is an aggressive sell. Just took one sell to get to that level here. I wouldn't do anything quite yet, because the next purchase could bring you right back up here, or it could move you down to this line. When you start to see some more, so when you have these sells, again, just kind of these purchases, just leave them alone and see where buying steps in, and then you can kind of join the party. So this sell here, you don't know where it's going. Your risk is down here and your reward is up here. So I don't think there's a lot to do on that one. So again, the top of the range was kind of your spot, and now you're in a little bit of no man's land on that one. But if it gets down into this area, call it $600 bucks, on the PSA 9, 1,500. Well, that's what is that? 2,000, 1,600, 1,700 on the 10. I think that's going to be an interesting spot for that particular card. Eloy Jimenez. So you're not going to have news on him for a little while, and so there's not going to be that catalyst to drive it higher. And so what we are seeing, again, you had your top of the range area right here, where we said, you know what, this is probably where we're going to see some selling. Honestly, I said I like Eloy a lot. I look for him to do some good things this year, and that also is not going to happen. So there's not going to be that news catalyst. I think people will get interested in this area here in that $40 to $50 area that we said kind of look for, and we're getting close there. You're sitting at about $53 right now. As long-term prospects are a little bit more in question, missing most of last year, missing this year. Can't do that at this age. But if there is a player that can put up some monster seasons, I do believe it's Eloy. I am just going to hold what I have, and I don't have that much in there. Base cards, a couple some parallels and things of that nature. Nothing crazy. So I'm just going to kind of hang on to it. But if you're loaded up on Eloy, then just hang on a little bit, because I think you see some buying step into here. And as news of his recovery starts to come out again, that'll push his prices just up a little bit, because I mean he is talented. So again, he's lumped in with a bunch of players right now on a track that doesn't look super favorable, but I think he's also one of the few on that track that could put up a 6 or 7 win season and get right back into this one. So, all right, Cody Bellinger. So we're going to replace Eloy going forward until we see some news on him, and we'll rotate that between some other guys here. So Cody Bellinger, the trend is you had your big spike, in a move down, and now the trend is up, and so. But it's very boring and slight. It looks almost more sideways than anything. But it's at a decent spot where some buying is taking place. This was a better spot here. We talked about it back a few months ago, but it is what it is. So there's enough buying in this area to kind of support this level here. So if you get back down to here, it'd be really interesting. But intermediate term, the trend is up. Shorter term, the trend is it's down. So if you can get a break above this, that would be an even better sign. But you could certainly take a stab, kind of in this area here, $185, $86, and if it got down to, what is that, 150, 160 or something like that, I think that'd be really, really interesting for Mr. Cody Bellinger. So see if he does something during the season. That would be even more helpful. Juan Soto, long-term trend is up. A lot of consolidation just above this $300 area. He's trading about $316. He had his high of about 318, and now he's about right in that 315, 320 area. As long as he hangs out here, and there's a ton of buying in this one, I think people are just kind of getting anxious for him to do something and start to push those cards back up just a little bit here. So I think Juan Soto is probably a buy in this area here. If it does start to drop down into this 280 range, then it might leak a little bit further. Not a lot of buyers to step in here historically. So I think this is probably too cheap and not happening anytime soon. So this seems like a reasonable spot as long as we're above that $300 area. Fernando Tatis, we'll zoom in a little bit on the short term on this one here. So he had his previous high mark. You scooted above it a little bit, and we traveled in this nice wedge, but prices compressed a little bit here. So you had your tops and your bottoms pretty well defined, and now it's broken out of this. And so, we're not just retesting the other side. So you could see a little bit more downward pressure on Fernando Tatis. But again, there's a lot of buying in here, and I think people will be eager to snap it up if he, especially if he gets off to a start like he did last year. If he's able to start hitting balls, perform at that very high level, then I think a lot of people come in here. If he struggles, gets hurt, then you are looking back into this area, the $150 area. So right now, not much to do. If it gets down into this, call it $230, $240 area, then I think that's pretty interesting for this card. And as long as it stays above this, you're good to go. If it drops below this area, then you are looking at lower prices here. So be a little bit mindful on that card. So we might be able to draw a different line here and see that it's kind of putting in a bottom, but I wouldn't do anything with it maybe just yet here. Derek Jeter. So on Card Ladder, you can set alerts. So when you go in and you add a card to your watch list, you can set a price. And so I've done that with a few cards here that I would be very interested in. So you have this long consolidation and this monster spike, and I wasn't going to touch that. I'll let it come back down to hopefully this level, which is around $600 $610. This is the PSA 8 of that card. And so I'm just going to be patient on this one. It had a consolidation, broke down. So this is kind of similar to what we saw with Tatis. He had a big move up. Consolidation broke down, and I don't think it goes down as far as Jeter on this one. This got up pretty good, but the trend is down on this one, and I'm hoping that it gets back down to this area here. Usually you have when you have these breakouts, they do retest at some point here, and so hopefully we get that again, and then I will be a interested buyer at that point. But for now, the trend is down, and you just don't do much with it except set an alert and watch it. So, all right. Ricky Henderson, same kind of thing here. You had your breakout, your consolidation, and then it really got going here. And so the trend is down on this one. um, still. But as prices compress and narrow, then we do favor it to break back up to the upside at some point. But again, for now, the trend is down, and so I'm looking for lower prices. This is another card I have some alerts set on. I've got a pretty decent looking raw version, but I think I'd like something a little bit nicer. And if the PSA 8, was able to hit that $210 area right in here and test this previous line, then I think I'd be pretty happy. But there's probably a few things we can draw here and say that there's enough buying in here. Maybe this is where it stalls out and I miss out. But again, while the trend is down, I'm just going to be patient and watch that card here. So all right, a couple football names here. Dak Prescott. So we actually did Dak a few months ago here and said this is an interesting spot to buy, and he's moved up solidly here, not to his previous peak by any stretch here, but the trend is up. He's respecting this line and kind of crawling upwards in it here. So seems like an interesting spot overall. It seems like a lot of money. I think there's still some question about his recovery and all of that, but yeah. So you're just kind of range bound in here. You're around that $300-400 area, and you've got upside to pretty decent upside, right around that. Oh, is the high price on $1,500. So you're kind of in the middle of the range here, but as long as it's respecting this line here, then it's probably okay to buy. If it breaks this, then you're coming back down to this area here where you had a lot of buying previously. So watch that and be nimble. Who do we have here? Alvin Kamara. So a lot of these names, I just look at the card ladder, who's hot, who's not, and here on various other videos, and then honestly, who do I like in fantasy? So it's a little bit randomness here, but it is what it is. So 300 or $250 on the upside, $150 on the downside. You're kind of in the middle of that range right now, so not a lot to do on that one. If it gets back down in here, you buy it, and if it gets back up here, you sell it. But right now in the middle, you just say, I don't know, and that's okay sometimes. You don't have to buy anything today. It's always all right to kind of set your levels and follow the process or something like that. Michael Thomas. A little bit of news at the end of the season here. I don't know if this is Drew Brees retiring or what happened on this one here, but it came up to a level where there's been selling before, so that's why we look at these. We don't care about the news too much. We care about investor psychology. So top of the range. And coming back down to this lower boundary here where we've seen buying a few times here. So getting towards the top on this one again. So maybe a seller on that $400 area. And if you're patient, now at some point it breaks out of this. So if it gets to this and busts up, then you're talking about a $550 card pretty quickly here. But right now you don't do anything. If it breaks out, then you sacrifice this, but you get this. And that's probably a fair trade-off. But otherwise, if it comes back down to here, take a good hard look. All right, got a couple basketball here. Excuse me, Steph Curry, and you can see that the momentum is starting to flatten out just a little bit on this card here. So you had your big rise, and then a consolidation, and then another breakout. And again, that's how these things go. And these things travel in a channel. At some points, they break out. So all those other cards where it's like in the middle, just be patient. But if you're at the top or the bottom, just play the ranges. If it's at the top, you sell until it doesn't work anymore. Then when you bust out of that range, then you buy it. Your risk reward changes a little bit here. So we've got some compression in the Steph Curry card here. And it's sitting at the bottom, so this is a decent spot to buy this card, I suppose. What you would be looking for is to move back up to this. Again, if it falls out of this one, then it's going to be a quick move back into this area where there's a couple of buyers. And if you're really, really super patient, what you want to do is just wait for something back down to that $2,000 area, because at some point it probably gets there. But in the near term, the risk reward, not a lot of risk, and there's a lot of reward if you're able to manage it properly. All right, LeBron G had his big move. And so this is what I'm kind of talking about in these big breakouts that will return to a natural level. LeBron certainly did that. So he had a monster move from 5,000 up to 12,000. This is the PSA 9. And, low volume. And so just kind of leave that alone. And now it's been a controlled descent. And it pretty much came back down to this level here. So still struggling with the upper boundary here. So we'll see what happens if the next sale just really brings it down here. And then if you start to see a lot of buying in here, then you know it's probably safe to jump in. But with all this kind of sporadic buying, low volume moves, I'm inclined to stay away from those. You can see that these are very controlled, and that's a nice look here. Then you get a little bit messy here, then you have a lot of buying, and that looks interesting. So try and buy where there are clusters, and there are none at this point here. The trend is down. So Again, right here you could take a stab at it, but honestly, I would wait for a break above that line. Then you see some sort of consolidation and then break out. But for now, I think I just went off the screen there. That does you no good. I apologize for that. We'll give you a different example here. Luca thought this was an interesting area to buy, and it is until it isn't. But the trend is down on this one. It's pretty obvious at this point here. So maybe you see $1,000 on this card. Nice round number that people like, but it's not able to hold on to this area where there was a ton of buying. So now what you have right here is all of these people are now underwater. So that's a lot of people. Right here, you had a lot of people that made their money and they were able to sell to these people. Now you had a lot of people buying, and they're looking at the card like I lost money on Luca. And if they start coming in, this could accelerate to the downside, and maybe they start picking it back up again in this area. We'll see. But breaking this is not a great sign. And so again, overall, you take a stab at 1,000, but the overall trend, at least in the intermediate term, is down. And so just the patient person would either wait for a move into here, which would be a really big drop, or wait for a break above this downtrend line, and then you can have some consolidation, and then perhaps a sideways action, and then some sort of breakout. But the trend is down until it isn't. So be mindful of that one. And Jason Tatum, I think I looked at him last week and said this was an interesting area, and it was for a minute. But it's back into here. When you're looking at a lot of these other cards that are kind of breaking their previous support from last fall, it wouldn't surprise me if he compresses and breaks lower as well into that $400 area, maybe even lower. So again, a lot of these cards look really interesting, but be careful while those downtrends are in place. Kind of a no man's land. You can see here that the momentum continues to trend downwards as well. You're not seeing when you're looking at stuff that's kind of going sideways, you want to see the momentum, like the volume start to pick back up. And at least in this firm, we're not seeing that right now. We're seeing more selling than buying at this point here. So, I mean, obviously there's a sale and a purchase. They do have to match up, but sellers are more eager. So that's kind of how the momentum thing works here. So, anyways. Again, yeah, a lot of these players are breaking this support from there, and so it would make sense that he would as well. But in the intermediate term, again, here's your risk and here's your reward. So, but those prices are compressing negatively. And we'll wrap it up with Charizard. Got to do some Pokemon, right? Try and mix it up and do something interesting. Whatever card ladder has that's interesting, we'll do that one. So, again, here's your bubble. So our cards in a bubble, they were some of them. So it came back into this level, and it's gone sideways. And so that's what I'm looking for in a lot of these cards. You had your bubble. You're coming back into an area where I think you just have sideways. So the downtrend was in place, and it just breaks it by moving to with time basically. And so we are seeing a lot of sideways action here. Your top is around $2,800 or something like that, and your bottom's around call it 1,400, and there's a slight trend upwards here, but mostly it's just sideways action. So there's not a lot to do here. At some point it will break below or it will break above, but we don't know which direction, so that's why we set these levels here. But for now, this is a sell and this is your buy, and right now you're in the middle and there's not a lot to do. All right, we'll wrap it up with the most important chart, and that is the overall money supply. And you can see that this kind of came in with most assets rising at a really rapid clip here. When more money comes into the market, stocks will rise. So what you used to have with the stock market is rotation. When rates were going up, you'd buy financials, industrials, and materials. And when they went down, you'd buy bonds and real estate and utilities. And then when a ton of money comes in, it has to find a home, and so it goes into stocks. And then you have different asset classes. You have wine and you have art. You'll have SPACs, you'll have Bitcoin, and if a lot of money comes in, then you'll have sports cards. So we just keep inventing asset classes here. So for all these asset classes that have been elevated due to this, and I believe that sports cards are part of them, you really want to watch this money supply. And we're looking at another couple $1 trillion in stimulus packages, stimulus quote unquote, more waste, but that's going to enter the economy at some point here. So this probably doesn't stop anytime soon. But when that starts to roll over, then look the heck out here. So even if it just pauses, these are recessions. that's kind of a problem here. So, anyways, all right, I'll spare you a ton of the econ talk, and hope you all have a good Friday, a great Sunday, and enjoy the holiday weekend. We'll talk to you soon. Bye.